1, go! Oh, welcome to the not quite morning rant. We were supposed to do this morning, but yeah, things just didn't happen that way. I didn't get enough sleep, and I would have probably been an asshole through the whole thing. If I'm being honest, I probably would have just been an asshole.
So, like normal, just sleepy?
Normal, but not broadcast live. Well, normal, but broadcast live rather, because usually, the normal is, I'm an asshole, but I don't broadcast it, or at least I try not to. Oh wow, yeah. So, like I was telling you, it's been literally a week since I've done any live streams since we did um the Monday after WrestleMania,
Yeah,
and we did that in the morning, so it didn't give us a chance to kind of comment on um the Raw after WrestleMania, because obviously that was several hours later.
right.
So I know that we have a general objective for today, but I wanted to kind of, just because I don't want to have to really wait to do it any longer. But I'm wondering, we should do kind of a recap and analysis of what we think of the Raw after WrestleMania, or the fucking train wreck that it was.
Yeah,
Um, Obviously, we talked last Monday about how, things there were certain things during Mania that really smelled of Vince McMahon. Um, but I honestly didn't think that it was going to get too much worse. And then the Raw after WrestleMania came about, and people lost their minds, understandably so. Um, because I was hearing, and mind you, that's the first Raw I've seen in probably 10 years, because I haven't
right.
had cable. I haven't had cable. Um, as you know, I decided to get a free trial of YouTube TV so I could specifically watch the Raw after WrestleMania. Um, but people were losing their minds, saying that that was easily the worst Raw after WrestleMania that they've seen in several decades. And I want to get your perspective, because I know you watch far more than I do.
Yeah, it was weird. Like what got me was it just didn't feel like the Raw after Mania,
Hmm.
because if you watch, usually when the Raw after Mania for the last however long I've been watching, that crowd is loud and they're chanting all night long. And when the wrestlers are doing their promos, they have to keep stopping because they just get overwhelmed by how loud the crowd is.
Hmm.
And that didn't happen last week. It just felt like a normal everyday Raw, or every week Raw.
Right. And honestly, from the Raws that I remember, um, like that I think Raw in general, for me, from what I remember, that was the worst one. Like, that was the most low energy, just kind of, you know, from a fan perspective, I don't want to fucking be here because there's no point. Um, that's what it felt like to me. And because even, WrestleMania not being considered, I've seen some pretty hype Raws, even normal ones. And that was just, I feel like zombies could have come in and people would have been like, yeah, this is normal.
Well, I mean, a couple of years ago during the COVID era Raws, when they had the empty arenas
Hmm.
and they were filming them all from the Performance Center or the Thunderdome, wherever that was, um, they actually had zombies come out, so that probably would have been normal.
Wow, that shows you how little I watch it because I didn't know
Yeah,
that that actually
they
happened.
were promoting. I forget what the movie was, but they had actors dressed as the zombies come out there and they killed and eat the Miz.
Hmm.
But
Um, as far as what was supposed to be, the most talked about part of Mania into Raw, um, what we saw on Raw the following night regarding Cody Rhodes is, I mean, that I told you from the get go that that felt like, and YouTube, the way I'm describing things, YouTube's going to get mad at me for this. Um, it felt like Vince was aggressively sticking his dick where it didn't belong. And I mean, that was really why he was forced to quit and resign.
I mean, you're not wrong.
So he should have learned his lesson, but apparently he didn't. But the way that Cody Rhodes was handled on the Raw following WrestleMania reeked of Vince McMahon. And I mean, like I said, I haven't watched it in several years, so I really shouldn't have been as bothered by it as I was. Cannot talk. Um, but really, that made me just want to go postal.
Yeah, whenever well, I should have seen it coming at the beginning of the night when Brock come out there and shook Cody's hand and they were going to team up. I should have seen that coming.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, you know what really stuck out to me from Raw last week?
What's that?
Every time Cody comes out to the ring and every time he gets the microphone, he always starts off saying, "What do you want to talk about?"
Yeah.
Last week he got the microphone. Of course, he come out and he interrupted Roman and Solo. He got the microphone. He's like, "I know what I want to talk about,"
Yeah.
and I'm like, "This is going to be a great promo." I mean, Cody, I think, is incapable of having a bad promo.
Right.
I told you last night when we were watching it, he's the best on the mic on their roster right now, in my opinion.
Um the reason that I wanted to, I mean, because I know that our main objective is not wrestling related, but the one thing that popped into my head as I was, starting the stream, we just, or I just learned and obviously relayed the information to you that there's a potential that Vince is looking to release Cody after Backlash. Next month? I think it is May 6th.
Yeah,
Um, Vince is looking, may potentially be looking to release Cody after Backlash, after his, you know, run with Brock Lesnar's done, and not even letting him go the full distance to try and get the title again from Roman. Um, the one thing that I'm curious about is Vince seems to be very heavy handed when he's bent on releasing somebody. And I'm wondering, from your years of watching, does the concept of the family dynasty have any weight as to whether somebody gets released or not? Because obviously there was Dusty, Gold Dust, and Cody from the Rhodes family, or Runnels family, which is what their real name is. Um, it makes me wonder why he's so comfortable with the potential of releasing Cody. And yet you look at a family dynasty like the Anoy family, and I know I'm probably saying that wrong.
yeah, I think it's Anawai.
Anawai. Yeah, that would make sense because it's kind of Hawaiian, and Samoan. But it makes me wonder if Vince would have the same set of balls to try and release one of them. Because that, like you said, that family is so fucking big. It makes me wonder if they have a stronger hold on the wrestling industry than even Vince does. Would he even have the balls to try and release one of them?
Well, I mean, yeah, because he had released. Well, I mean, we were talking about him before we went live. He had released Rosie and Jamal in the past.
Oh,
He
that's
brought
right.
them back, but when he, I mean, it was honestly probably the best thing that could have happened for Jamal because he came back as Umaga and he was pushed as a megastar.
Yeah, and then didn't he die a few years later?
Yeah, what I understand, he was watching TV and he had a heart attack at like 35 years old.
God
He
damn.
wasn't very old at all.
Um, but I just I don't I mean, and I don't think anybody really does, even people closest to him. I don't understand the way Vince's brain works.
I don't think Vince understands the way Vince's brain works.
Not at fucking 300 years old, no. Um what they were somebody was because I think it was right at Mania when he decided to come out with the new mustache and the dyed hair. So
Yeah,
I think I heard somebody refer to him as somebody called him Snidely Whiplash, which is a cartoon reference. Um, and then somebody said he looks like the guy that puts the damsel in distress on the train tracks.
they're not wrong.
No, because if you look at what we know Vince to look like on an everyday normal basis versus what he looked like at Mania or even during that conference that he had or that interview that he had talking about the sale, it, they don't even look the same. Like they barely look the same.
Well, that TikTok you sent me this morning, I can't remember the guy's name, but you said you rarely like him, but it was funny. Um, he was roasting Vince. What was his name? I think his name was John Oliver.
Oh, Oliver, yeah.
He, I was laughing so hard watching that just because I can't remember what all he said about Vince now, but I know when I was watching it, I was dying laughing.
Yeah, John Oliver is kind of a twat in the grander scheme of things. He does have some funny takes on certain things, but overall he's kind of a twat.
Mm.
Um and I'm not really afraid to say that. YouTube can try and strike me. I don't give a shit. Um but yeah, it's moving along to because obviously, there were other programs that we watched that weren't in the same promotion throughout the week, but I felt SmackDown was a little bit better. Not necessarily, still wasn't great, but it was a little bit better. Um, what were your thoughts on SmackDown?
So I've not actually watched it.
The hell is the matter with you?
I mean, I was down at APW Friday night,
True, that's true.
and then I've just been, with it being Easter, we had stuff we had to get done.
Um, you remember the the speech that Hunter made when he came out on Raw the
Yeah.
following night? Um, Pretty much said the same line of shit um, on SmackDown. The only thing that was different, because a lot of people were mad that he was basically just regurgitating the same shit from Raw. Um, the only thing that was different was that he announced that um, the draft was coming back.
Yeah, I saw a clip of that.
And I mean, I think between NXT, Raw, and SmackDown, maybe after we're done with this, we look at those rosters and kind of see who we can pick. Oh, hold on, a window popped up on my screen. Um, that was fucking weird. I think I hit something on my keyboard. Um, but I think we should do kind of a stream where we talk about who's potentially getting shifted around to where and kind of speculate as to why it could happen. Um, I don't necessarily like the idea of the draft because I started watching it in early 2000 and they hadn't yet done anything with the draft. Like the draft wasn't a thing yet.
Yeah,
Um, so they were, you know, there were stars bouncing between shows, which I thought was great because it created even more of um, it created more content for the story for a storyline. Um, so I think that doing the draft eliminates the possibility of creating stronger stories. Because right now, like you said, the Judgment Day is primarily on Raw, but with Rhea being the SmackDown Women's Champion, she appears on SmackDown now too, and so does the Judgment Day sometimes. And it blows my mind that there's no consistency anymore. And I mean, I know that that sounds counter to what I just said about I don't think the draft should exist, but it's like it's a weird dynamic of having somebody who's on Raw have a SmackDown Women's Championship and have obligations to go appear on that show. It's weird to me.
if they would do like they used to do, it would. And what for me, it would be better. Um, it used to be once they had the draft, you had this group of wrestlers on SmackDown, you had this group of wrestlers on Raw. Nobody jumped between shows. This month, you'd have the Royal Rumble, which would be both brands would come together and have the show.
Mm-hmm.
I think for the first year or two when they first started the draft, the only time the SmackDown and Raw rosters ever saw each other was at pay-per-views.
Mm-hmm.
And then for a while it went you would have the Rumble, so both rosters were together.
Yeah.
Whatever the pay-per-view was in February would be a Raw pay-per-view. Then you would come up in March, and most of the time WrestleMania is at the end of March or the beginning of April. So
Mm-hmm.
if you had WrestleMania in March, you'd have both shows together. Then the next show, the pay per view in April, would be SmackDown. They just alternated rosters for the pay per views. And that would leave usually 8 weeks between Raw pay per views. So that gave them 8 weeks to build up matches. But now you've got Roman and the Bloodline jumping from show to show every week.
Yeah.
I mean, if they would keep the wrestlers on their show, which I get Roman has to jump back and forth because he has both titles.
Mm-hmm.
But the Usos losing the tag team titles, there's no need for them to be jumping back and forth anymore except to be Roman's lackeys.
Right.
But other than unified champions, they need to just keep one roster on SmackDown, one roster on Raw, and just work it that way. But
Yeah.
they won't do that. They've never known what to do. They've got too much talent and not enough TV time.
Yeah. As far as like going back to the Judgment Day, if they were to split up the Judgment Day, for some reason, because of the dynamic between the two of them, I see Rhea and Dom kind of going to the same show.
Yeah.
Um, and then Finn and Damien, I can't really pinpoint the dynamic between the two of them because Damien seems almost disconnected
Yeah.
from the Judgment Day. Like he's a part of it, but he's disconnected from it. Because I feel like he is what they call a wanderer. Like he doesn't really enjoy being tied down to certain people. That's the vibe that I get from him.
So from the time that I started seeing him, he was always a singles wrestler.
Mhm.
Now, I don't know what he did, whether he was in any stables or not before I started seeing him wrestle. But right while you were saying that he seems disconnected, he's the least. He's the only one in the group that hasn't stood out. Like Rhea, I mean, she was already a standout before the group was put together. Finn
Yeah.
Balor, everybody knows who he is all across the world because of all the countries he's wrestled in. Um, Dominic, he's become like he's getting better every time he gets in the ring for a match, and he's got the most heel heat on him right now.
Yeah. I mean, I know
But
obviously you're not supposed to like Dom. Um, so I guess me not liking him is kind of their objective. I mean, obviously he's supposed to be a dick.
yeah,
He's good at it. And that's why when you and I were talking earlier, that's why I want to see the potential of Ray turning heel just so he can completely just destroy Dominic. Because the only way that Ray is really going to destroy Dominic and really make people question, you know, is he really a heel? Is if he just if Ray turns heel and just completely annihilates him and not, put him over the rope and, battle his ass like a little kid.
I mean, in order for that to work, though, they're going to have to turn Dom back into a face and get the fans on his side because otherwise you just got one heel fighting another heel, and we've seen that before.
Yeah, but I think because there's the actual legitimate family dynamic, I think it would work.
I mean, it could work. The problem's going to be even if
For
Ray turns heel, I don't think they're going to be. I think the fans are still going to be behind him more than they are Dom. So
Yeah.
if they were to do that, if Ray started attacking Dom, the fans are just going to start cheering him.
Yeah, it wasn't I forget who it was. Um I think it was early in the 2000s maybe. There was somebody that they tried to turn heel, but people were so supportive of him
Stone
that
Cold.
was it Stone Cold?
They tried to turn Stone Cold heel, and the fans just refused to let it happen.
Because I think we naturally view Stone Cold as a heel, so them trying to exaggerate that natural kind of persona that he has, I think it just doesn't work. I think like I said, it's over exaggerated, and I think when you over exaggerate something like that, it doesn't work.
I mean, the
Because
fact that before they turned him heel, we saw him beat the shit out of Vince for like 7 or 8 years. Didn't
yeah, because
that?
I mean it's because I don't know that they ever declared whether Taker was a heel or a face. It didn't
Yeah,
matter. It didn't matter whether he was a heel or a face. We didn't necessarily know, but I think if you ask any wrestling fan, they're gonna say that Undertaker is at least in their top five. of
Yeah,
wrestlers that they enjoy watching.
yeah. But I remember it was the late '90s. I think Taker was part of the Ministry of Darkness, and they were a heel faction. Like that's the group that put Stephanie on the symbol and crucified her.
I've seen clips of that. I didn't start watching until 2000, but I've seen clips of that. Yeah.
But yeah, he was pretty. That whole group was pretty hated, and then they teamed up with Vince and became the corporate ministry.
Hmm.
And I think The Rock was with them at that point in time too.
That's another one where they didn't like Rock as a baby face. They booed the shit out of him. And then it seemed like when they tried to turn him heel, like Rock is in that gray area where he kind of acts like the arrogant asshole that a heel would, but he's not necessarily a heel, it seems.
Well, he they put him with the Nation of Domination.
Yeah, that was
After
before I started watching.
after they started booing him when he was supposed to be a face,
Yeah.
and he went to Vince and he was like, "I need to be a heel," so they put him with the Nation, and that's when his career started really taking off.
Hmm.
Um, but somewhere along the way, like they kept booing him for a long time, and somewhere along the way, they started breaking up the Nation and um, The Rock and Farouk or Ron Simmons
Yeah.
started having their differences, and at some point, The Rock became a mega baby face. Now, after he went and started making his movies, and he came back as a heel, and he was good at getting the heat on him, and it kind of culminated with him and Hulk Hogan fighting at WrestleMania. I think it was WrestleMania 18.
Mhm.
Um, but during that match, they just started cheering both wrestlers.
Yeah.
So
Kind of like what they do or what they did in the early 2000s when, you'd have one side of the arena chanting, let's go Cena, and the other one would say Cena sucks. So
yeah,
it's kind of that dynamic. Um,
I've been in the arena to hear that in person.
that's got to be wild. I mean, because
It
I
was
was I was at a WCW house show when I was a young teenager, where I grew up, and I mean, I guess it was because most of the people in that area are people that I knew. The energy wasn't anything different to me. Um, but watching it on TV, watching WWE or WWF back then on TV, and seeing the way that the crowd is with them, I'd love to go to a WWE show. Like they have them here in Roanoke quite often. They do the house shows here, and I'd love to see one because I feel like just the energy would be different.
yeah. I never got to go to a WCW show. I tried to get my dad to get tickets so many times growing up. Um, Sting was on my bucket list of wrestlers to see in person, and
Hmm.
unless AEW comes to Charlotte and he's with them, I guess I'll never get to see him in person. But I've been to Raw like 30 times. I've been to the Judgment Day pay per view. I've been to a SmackDown ECW house show, and I've been to SmackDown once, and I'm going to SmackDown again next month. And I'm the fan that'll watch it when I'm in the arena, but then
Yeah.
I'll go home the next morning. I'll get up and watch it on the TV where I forgot it recorded. Just because, like, when you're in the arena, you can't hear the announcers.
Hmm.
So when you're in the arena, it seems like it's a great show.
Hmm.
The crowd, no, even that Raw after Mania last week, I guarantee you that in the arena, that crowd thought it was great. But then they went home and watched it on TV and are like, we don't sound that loud.
Yeah.
So it's just when you're there with 15,000 other people, it can sound Like it'll come across in the arena as if it would be great coming out over the airwaves.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we've learned over the last 3 or 4 years, dealing with the pandemic, um, that there is a very distinguishable type of energy and level of energy that you have when you are allowed to congregate with people that you know and that you don't know,
Yeah,
um, at large public events. And I think that, the majority of us who actually, paid attention to that kind of stuff over the last 4 years, um, I think we know that, that kind of energy exists, and that's really what we need to get back to as far as, um, public gatherings, re, you know, re re I can't figure out the word that I'm trying to think. Figuring out again. I'm just gonna say that too many words, but I was trying to figure out the one word that, that would fit. But figuring out again what community means,
yeah,
because there's nothing like, I mean, and you don't have to know anybody that you're in an arena with. You don't have to know a damn person,
right.
but just that energy that you feel from other people that are in the same location you are for the same fucking reasons, there's nothing like it.
The
It is incredible.
the first big event that I've went to since all that happened was the Jelly Roll and Co Wetzel show back in October.
Mhm.
And Jelly Roll has that song "Son of a Sinner."
Yeah, I've heard parts of it. I don't think I've heard the whole song yet.
Well, he sung that song, and then when it was over, when the music quit, he stood up on this little platform thing already on the stage, started singing the chorus again. Then he stopped, and we were in, I think it was CNCB. It's an amphitheater. I can't remember the initials.
Is it BB&T?
No, no,
Oh.
it's CNCC, CNCB. I don't remember. Anyway, there were like 10,000 people there, and he started singing, just sung the first two or three words, and then stopped. And I was taking a video of him singing that song because I love that song.
Yeah.
And I turned my phone around and looked, and you had all these people singing it. And I'm
Mhm.
like, you had white people, you had African Americans, you had Hispanic people. Every one of them were singing the words to that song. And I was like, that's the first time that what you were talking about a few minutes ago, being in there with people you don't know, that's the first time since all that happened that I've been there and got to experience in person.
Yep. You don't
And
you don't
there,
realize that you realize what you're missing until you experience that type of energy.
yeah, and when they were singing it, I looked down and like I had literal chills on my arm,
Mhm.
and I'm like, okay, it's just amazing what the power one person can have over 10,000 like that.
Yeah. It also scares you a little bit to realize that one person can have that big of an impact, because you realize what one person, the doctor of death, um, has had over people the last 4 years.
Yeah,
So, I mean, you have to look at, both sides of the spectrum, the positive and the negative.
yeah,
Um, and it's wild to see the similarities and differences. Um, But getting away from wrestling, because I know that we could probably make this entire stream about it. Um, we've got to get in, actually you talking about music gives us the perfect segue. Um, Obviously, since we did the stream last Monday, I had come across a story which was probably even, happened earlier than when I came across it. Um, Obviously, I brought you on again because this is something you're a little bit more connected to than I am as far as being a fan. Um, we got word last week or the week before that um, Motley Crue and Mick Mars had seemingly parted ways. Um, we got it. The news initially stated that Mick was stepping back from the touring aspect because of his health. Um, most of us that are old enough to know, we know that Mick, since he was 17, has been dealing with some form of debilitating spinal thing. I think I don't know if it's
Yeah,
a full.
it's
I don't know if it's a full bone thing or if it's just his spine. But I know that it completely renders him incapable of freely moving.
yeah, it's from what I understand, it's some kind, and I can't pronounce the word.
I probably could if I saw it. I just don't have it in front of me.
It's they call it AS, but it's like Ankyleo. I don't know. I don't.
Yeah, Ankleo. I don't know. I know the S. I know the S word, but I just can't think of it. Um, but I mean, I've loved Motley Crue since I was a kid. I listened to them because of listening to Guns N' Roses. Um, Obviously, not to beat a dead horse, we all know the story of why I started listening to music. But I started listening to Motley Crue after I discovered Guns N' Roses. Um, so I've liked them since I was a little kid. But I I got to see them in, I want to say it was 2005 when they did the reunion tour. I think that's when it was. There was the Carnival of Sins tour, and they came to a town close to me where I grew up, and I loved that performance. Um, but even then, even having never seen them before, I could tell that there was a difference in the way that Vince performed.
Yeah,
And he just vocally, he just was out of shape, out of practice, and he was very, like, it was he was overexerting himself, and it was not doing him any favors.
yeah,
Um so, as much as I loved listening to them when I was a kid, there was a very noticeable difference when I ended up seeing them live. At the time, if I remember correctly, Mick was still mostly mobile. Like, he was moving around the stage, not very fast, like not Nikki Six fast, but he was moving around the stage, at a good pace, just maybe to, keep himself from stiffening up as, more than he already was. Um, so it was a great performance from what I remember. And I'm actually also trying to remember who they were touring with at the time. I don't remember. I'll have to look back at that after we get off the stream. But overall, for my first experience, it was great seeing them at that performance. In the last few years, I've seen them, I've seen clips of them performing, and Vince just doesn't have it anymore.
yeah,
And he needs to come to terms with that. So it bothered me when I heard that Mick was leaving the band, although I understood because of his health. He actually has a legitimate reason to need to step back, because if he doesn't, he's going to do something irreparable to himself.
right. And he's
Um,
71 too, so
that fucking blew my mind. Like, to
yeah.
realize how old those fuckers are,
Like
that blew my mind.
I knew how the other, I knew Mick was older. I didn't know he was that much older.
um, so we had originally gotten the news that Mick was stepping back from touring because of his health. And we all, were like, yeah, that's probably the best, for him, for his safety, because a week prior to that, I think it was, he actually got bum rushed on stage by a fan.
Yeah, I remember
Uh,
you telling me about that.
and knowing is remembering that he wasn't exactly moving around the greatest back in '05 or 2005. Um, Seeing him get bum rushed like that scared the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Thankfully, the security guards were very quick to, or get the situation under control. But I can understand in his, forgive me for saying this, diminished capacity, um, he's not able to keep his composure when something like that happens. Um, because I don't know if they knocked him over or if he still stayed standing. I gotta watch the video again. But then obviously the announcement came out that he was retiring from touring, but still staying a part of the band. Now, the one thing that I didn't really understand was that Mick and Nikki Six were actually the ones that started the band. Um, so they have been over the last couple weeks. They've been referring to Mick as one of the founding members of the band. So imagine my surprise and my disgust when I heard that after they announced his retirement, I started hearing things come out that said he was actually forced to retire because he was ganged up on by the rest of the band and their management and told that he was a liability. And they wouldn't actually confirm that that happened, but people close to Mick were confirming it. So, we thought that was the end of it, where, okay, it's kind of shitty that that happened. About 3 days ago, 4 days ago, Mick actually launched a full scale lawsuit against the band and Motley Crue LLC, which I didn't know that they actually made an LLC
Yeah, I didn't either.
out of Motley Crue. I mean, it's a brilliant idea, especially when you've been around for what, 50 years, 40 years, 50 years.
40, 42 years now, I think.
Um, because they started in the late 70s, I think. Late 70s, early 80s.
81.
Was it 81?
Well, I know their Decade of Decadence album was 81 to 91.
Oh, okay. Um, I thought they started more around the time of Aerosmith, but I could be wrong. But um, fuck, where was I going with that?
Yeah, 81. I just looked it up to make sure I was telling you the truth.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out where I was going with that. My brain just went. uh, the fuck was I saying?
It's talking about Mick launching the lawsuit.
Um, Son of a bitch. I hate when I have a brain lapse like that. But knowing that they go back that far and Mick is one of the founding members, for them to come out and say that, you know, he's lying about being forced out. Um, oh, I know what I was talking about. The fact that, being that they've existed for that long, making themselves an LLC, like an actual company, makes sense because they have that long of a history. That's what I was saying. So it makes it a little bit more difficult when you are dealing with normal band stuff if you are an LLC instead of just a band.
Right.
because it adds an extra layer of fuck you if you don't, do the right thing for the organization. Um, so Mick came out and basically said, "I'm the one that he in his own words he says, I'm the one that has basically carried these fuckers for the last 50 years or however many decades, um, and this is how they're treating me." And when they announced his retirement, there were even other musicians that had been involved with Motley Crue at one time or another in their careers where they were coming out and saying Mick retiring doesn't make sense to us. Um, they said, it doesn't make he because of how good he is at what he does still, and because of how dedicated he is to Motley Crue as an organization and as a band, it doesn't make sense that he's retiring. It sounds like there's more to the story. So we find out that um, Mick is now specifically feuding mostly with Nikki, um, because it almost seems like Tommy and Vince are just employees. I don't know if that's the case, but if Mick is specifically feuding with Nikki, um, you've got Mick saying that he's never because Nikki was saying that Mick had started playing. He was visible on stage, but he wasn't actually playing. That all of his parts were recorded, and
See,
Mick fired back saying, "No, I play all of my stuff live. Your vocals, along with Vince's vocals and Tommy's drums, are the ones that are recorded."
yeah, I saw that, and I saw like they were saying that Mick was playing the wrong chords and stuff, and
Yeah,
he
which is
actually,
something that he's known to have
well,
never done.
what I was reading before we got on the video,
Hmm.
he did say there were parts where he messed up and hit the wrong chords, but it was because of a malfunctioning the inner ear thing they have to wear.
Yeah,
I can't remember what it was called, but he said it was malfunctioning, and he ended up hitting the wrong chords.
yeah.
Um,
It's basically just the in ear monitors.
yeah, but he said that like the article said he had told them when they started the tour last year that it was going to be his last tour.
Yeah,
Um, and the tour got extended from 12 weeks to like 26 weeks. And he agreed to stay on for the extended time. And then when it was over, like back in October, he made the announcement to them that he's retiring from touring, but he's going to still be with the band and he'll be available to them to record new music. And, if they had a residency where he didn't have to travel too far from home, he would play those shows.
yeah,
And then the next day, the rest of the members had a closed door meeting with their lawyers and whoever else and just decided to fire him.
yeah.
But I'll be honest, when you first told me about it, about the lawsuit and everything, you want to know what went through my head?
Um, I was gonna be a smart ass and say the bullet from the first corn video, but no.
No, no. What went through my head was here we go again because this is not the first time they've had issues like this.
Hmm.
At one point they had a whole different singer because the band
John
got rid of
Karabi.
him, and I'm glad I have the Red, White, and Crew album, and I will not listen to his songs because I did not like his voice. And
See,
apparently, I wasn't the only Crew fan that felt that way.
I like John Karabi's voice. I can understand where people wouldn't like him filling in for Motley Crue because I think he also filled in at one time uh vocally for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Or maybe he
Mm.
was just a maybe he was just a guitarist for them. but I know of other bands that he's been the vocalist for.
Yeah, but I don't know. He just when he was singing on their songs, it just didn't sound like Motley Crue to me.
Mhm.
Um, and then later on, Tommy Lee left, and they had a female drummer, and I didn't like. I saw a video, like an interview with her when they were on like Regis and Kelly, or might have still been Regis and Kathy Lee. I don't remember,
Probably.
but she's like, yeah, she's like, my boyfriend's jealous because I'm hanging out with Motley Crue every day. She's like, but how many people get a chance to say I'm the drummer for Motley Crue?
Right.
And I mean, I didn't actually know about that until after Tommy Lee came back. So I don't know if I actually heard her play the drums, but
I'm gonna have to look that up to see who she was.
yeah,
Um, because Guns N' Roses actually had a similar situation, and actually now it's a permanent situation. Their original keyboardist was a guy named Dizzy Reed,
yeah,
and Dizzy Reed is phenomenal, and I believe they're actually still on good terms with Dizzy. He just didn't want to do the reunion tour, so they got a keyboardist, and I'm not going to remember her last name, but I know her first name is Melissa. And Chad, when I tell you, oh my God, I fell in love. Not only is she a fantastic keyboardist, she is fucking gorgeous. And she's got blue hair.
yeah,
And oh, like if I mean, I've gotten to see Guns N' Roses, and I've said this before, but I got to see Guns N' Roses in 2017, which means I got to see her with them. And let me tell you, I know that they always say, I know the joke always goes around with certain people where if they meet somebody that they're really, a fan of, like a hardcore fan of, they say, I'm going to have to bring a restraining order with me to have them sign it because that's just how it's going to happen.
yeah.
Because they're going to, want to have a restraining order against me after the fact. I'm not saying that I would ever do anything that would require me to have a restraining order against me. But just as a joke, if I got to Melissa Reeves, that's her name. If I got to meet her, yeah, there'd probably need to be a restraining order because I want because there's no real limit to us being on stream. I want you to look her up because I want to see what your reaction is. She is gorgeous.
All right. So before I do that, I just looked up. It was the female drummer Motley Crue had also played in Hole. Samantha Maloney.
I don't know who she is, but at least she upgraded because who the hell would want to be associated with Courtney Love?
Right? No, what was the other girl's name?
Melissa Reeves. She's yummy. God help me if she ever sees this. I hope she doesn't.
Do you know how to spell her last name?
Same as Christopher's last name,
Okay, gotcha.
Reeves. Well, it's Melissa Reeves. Christopher was Christopher Reeve without the S. Um,
Okay, so the one it brought up is the actress from Days of Our Lives.
oh Jesus. Maybe I'm pretty sure it's Melissa Reeves. Yeah, I don't completely random. I actually know who you're talking about. She played Jennifer Devereaux on Days of Our Lives. Um, just look up Melissa keyboardist Guns N' Roses. Maybe I'm getting the last name wrong. I thought it
Reese,
was
Reese.
shit. Melissa, if you ever see this, I'm sorry.
No,
But
he's not.
I mean Reese sounds like Reese's, and I'm sure you're delicious.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Is she not gorgeous? Holy shit.
Hmm.
Oh my god. Um,
Okay, this picture here, she almost looks like Brittany Jade, which
I
is one
don't
of the
know.
wrestlers that has
Oh,
blue hair.
well, that makes sense if they look alike. Um, but I think the reason that this story about Motley Crue captivated me and caught my eye was because it sounds a lot like um when there was the initial inner turmoil with Guns N' Roses back in '96 when they split up.
Yeah,
Um, because obviously, and I question whether it's actually whether the way they frame the narrative is actually true now because of what I know of Axl Rose. Uh, they basically said that Axl tried to take control of the band and wanted sole rights to the name and the intellectual property so that he could carry on doing it. Um, but the members that he basically kicked out or parted ways with that were the original members back then, um, they have come forth and have since said that even though at the time there was a lot of turmoil between them, um, most of those members got kicked out because of uh, substance abuse
yeah,
because they were no longer performing at the caliber at which they were supposed to be performing. And even on the original, the debut album, Appetite for Destruction, there's a song called Mr. Brownstone. And Axel literally wrote that about Slash and his alcohol abuse. Um, because back, I believe it was, you know, well, actually, yeah, they split up in '96. Prior to '96, when they were touring, Slash was known, and I don't know if this continued after he got into other bands after '96, but Slash was known to finish a 40-ounce bottle or a 40-ounce and a half bottle of Jack on stage.
yeah.
When so while and I don't know if Axel was ever into drugs. I don't think he was. I think he was the only one that didn't actually have a drug addiction. Um, he smoked cigarettes for many years. I don't know if he still does. I don't think he does. Um, but I think that the substance abuse from the rest of the band members was what pissed him off and what caused a lot of the problems, and that's why he broke up the original members. So when I heard about Nikki Six basically swinging his dick around trying to put all the heat on McMars, thinking to myself, it sounds a lot like Axl Rose, and it makes sense that Axl Rose and Nikki Six wouldn't like each other because they don't, um, because they're very similar. Now, Axl has gotten better in his, golden years. I just called him old. That makes me feel really old.
I mean, let's face it, he is.
He looks like an old lesbian now. I mean, well, there are pictures there are pictures of him online that make it look like he is an old lesbian. And it's terrible because they put a picture of him and a picture of Mickey Rourke together
I just,
and
I just, I just pulled up one of the pictures.
yeah, there's a pic they put a picture of him and a picture of Mickey Rourke together and it says that they look like a really haggard lesbian couple. Thankfully, those pictures were probably from between 2000, somewhere between 2000 and 2010. Um, because when I saw them in 2017, he did not look anywhere near that. Like he had, his skin had improved. He had lost a considerable amount of weight. And he started looking healthy again. And he has since gotten much better since I saw him. But yeah, the way that the rest of the band is kind of swinging their dicks around trying to assert dominance on the situation for Motley Crue, it reminded me a lot of what they said was happening with Guns N' Roses in the early '90s, early to mid '90s.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah,
I
I just
just it's difficult for me to comprehend this because you and it's I think if social media wasn't a thing, we probably wouldn't hear as much about this,
yeah,
but we learn so much more about the bands that we grew up with, so that star quality, that persona that we think we see, is completely just shattered. It basically humanizes them and sometimes demonizes them if they act like dickheads, um, to what they really want us to, the way they want us to perceive them.
yeah. Well, and I mean, too many people get obsessed with these celebrities and forget
Yeah.
that they're people. They forget they're human.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I know Axl Rose is a dude, and I know I'm a straight dude. But if I was able to meet Axl Rose, I would buy a pair of girls' panties just to throw at him.
I'm glad I didn't take a sip of this yet, because otherwise my computer would probably just quit working because of the spit take.
You're welcome.
No,
Uh,
speaking of Axel though, Axel and Carrie Underwood just did a song together on. I didn't see the video. I saw
they
people posting about it. I think they were on an award show or something. Or
Carrie's
no,
on. Carrie was on tour, and
yeah, he,
Carrie was on tour, and she always does Guns N' Roses songs because that's who got her into music as well. Um, she always does Guns N' Roses tunes. She does "Welcome to the Jungle," "Sweet Child of Mine" in Paradise City, almost at every show. I'd love to see her live for that fact, and the fact that I love her in Daisy Dukes.
no,
Um,
you and me
and I'm
both.
You and I are the only ones old enough that'll probably be seeing this that remember what Daisy Dukes are. But
Yep.
no, I've seen plenty of. I saw that one performance where Axel came out on stage with her, and let me tell you, I'm gonna not even gonna be afraid to say this. I fucking fangirled. Um, I fangirled so hard because obviously in modern times, Carrie is somebody that I have a lot of love and respect for. And then it's just Axl Rose. Like Axl Rose is, I don't care what he looks like. Axl Rose is the music version of Ryan Reynolds. Every guy that has a brain in their head, you know, a you know, idolizes Axl Rose on some level, or at least has some level of respect for him. I know you're gonna try and
You're not. You're not going. When you said he's the music version of Ryan Reynolds, I thought you was going to say every guy would want to sleep with him, and I was going to say not after the pictures I just looked at.
Well, thankfully, he has improved his outerly appearance since those pictures. Um, but no, it's like when you and I were growing up, we would go into the supermarket or a mini mart, and we would see all the tabloid magazines that would publish all these bullshit stories about the celebrities of the hour,
Yeah,
the ones that were popular back then. Um, and we all knew that they were bullshit because you were born knowing that tabloid magazines were just pure bullshit and they were there for cash grabs. Now you've
National
got the
Enquirer.
yeah. Um, but now you've got online the same thing but in a digital form, and for some reason people are now gravitating toward, oh, it must be true, it's online. Do you not remember tabloid magazines?
When people talk about the internet, and it's funny because we just said something like this to my daughter yesterday. I can't remember what Adriana said, but Courtney, she said she'd seen it online, and Courtney said, "Oh, well, it's online. It has to be true." And I'm like, "That's what Abraham Lincoln said."
There's a
But
meme out there that actually says that.
yeah, it was a thing I saw that said it looked like a quote, and it said, "The thing about getting quotes from the internet is you never know if the quotes are actually genuine." And then it said Abraham Lincoln, like it was his quote. So
Yeah.
that's why I said that yesterday.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I don't understand, and I think going back to your point about how obsessed we are with the concept of celebrity, I don't think, and I can say this because we're only maybe 4 years apart. I don't think our generation was as obsessed with celebrity as the online generation is,
Probably not,
because I think I
because
think I think we were able to look behind the curtain, so to speak, because of the tabloid magazines and already having the knowledge that they're bullshit. But now with the internet generation, they don't know what to believe, and they don't have the wherewithal to do the research on their own because they're encouraged not to.
um, it's easier for today's generation to get more obsessed than what we ever did
Mhm.
because they have these pictures and stuff readily available right here. If we
Mhm.
wanted a poster of a celebrity we liked, we had to, save up our money, go out to the store,
Mhm.
find the poster,
Yep.
and then buy it. We couldn't just get on our phone and find a picture we liked and then pull it up on the computer and print it out.
Do you remember going to the record store and just
Yep.
standing outside the record store and just flipping through the posters? And when they had like the metal frames that the posters were in,
Yeah.
and it, even if you didn't like any of the posters, for some reason, just that metal hitting each other was just mesmerizing.
Yeah. I
And
would
I,
flip through and look at all the posters and then I'd flip it back the other way.
yeah, and like I said, most of the time I didn't really care what posters were there, even if I was looking for a specific one. I didn't care what posters were there. That noise, for some reason, was just mesmerizing.
I had a nostalgia flashback with that about a year or so ago. Um, we were at Walmart,
Mhm.
and Walmart still has a little poster section, and you can still flip and look at them. So I just started flipping through them, and then of course there was a BTS poster. So
Why did I know that BTS was gonna enter this conversation somehow?
that poster is on my daughter's wall now. But I just
Are you sure your wife isn't gonna try to take it away from her and put it on her own wall?
she bought the same poster and laminated it for her classroom.
Oh my god. I mean, I guess it's not the worst idea for a poster in a classroom. There are a lot worse that teachers are putting up, so
She used to have like the best poster ever in a classroom, and it was one she had made.
yeah.
It was times that it's okay to interrupt Miss McDaniel. And it was like
Never.
if you're sick, if there's a tornado, if there's this, if there's that. Then she had a picture of Roman Reigns and a picture of Dean Ambrose, and she said if Roman Reigns or Dean Ambrose enters the schoolroom,
One of my I know she's never going to see this, so I can actually say this. When I was in school, she was never my favorite teacher because she was a pain in the ass. As I've gotten to be an adult, I've actually kind of become friends with her. She's my old English teacher from 11th grade. Um, Exceptional human being, fucking intelligent beyond even my, you know, ability to acknowledge or realize it. Um, we could easily derail that woman from teaching just by mentioning Robert Redford. For
mm,
some reason, she had a thing for Robert Redford. And I told her after I graduated, I'm like, mark my word, before that man dies, I'm going to see if I can have him come into your classroom and just completely throw off your day and make you not want to teach the rest of the day. I don't know if she's still teaching, but and I know that Robert Redford is pretty close to being a fossil by now. Um, but yeah, if I had the means, I would still make or try and make it happen to have her meet Robert Redford. It was so easy to completely derail her and make her completely lose her train of thought if you mentioned him.
Yeah, I had a teacher in third grade who I'm not gonna say she was obsessed because she didn't have pictures or nothing up, and she didn't always talk about him. But anytime she mentioned a celebrity, it would always be Andy Griffith. She would bring him up, and
The fact that SOB is still alive blows my mind.
who?
Andy Griffith.
No, he's not.
I thought he did. He die?
He passed away several years back. Yeah,
Andy Griffith, really?
yeah.
I think you're lying to me.
If I'm lying, I'm crying. I ain't shed a tear.
Son of a bitch, 2012.
He had a house in the Outer Banks
Who am
in
I?
Mania.
Who am I thinking of?
I have no
There's
idea.
no. Oh shit! Who was it? It was the guy. No, it wasn't Andy Griffith. It was the guy that was in that was the chimney sweep in Mary Poppins.
Um, Van Dyke.
Dick Van Dyke. I got him confused.
Is he still alive?
Yeah, that's why there that yeah, him I know he's still alive.
I hadn't heard nothing about him in years.
Yeah, Dick Van Dyke is still very much alive. 97. Yeah. Um yeah,
Okay.
the internet's going to come for me on that one
Well,
because I got
they're
those
going
two
to come
mixed.
for me too because the picture right here, he looks like something you see walking around in Zombieland.
Oh,
Holy
but
crap!
but God bless the man. He's still alive at 97. And I feel like a complete dickhead that I got him and Andy Griffith mixed up.
Okay, wasn't he in Night at the Museum?
Van Dyke, yes. I believe he was.
He,
One of them. I don't remember which one.
I think
I
he
think he
was
was
actually in both of them.
he
Well, I
might have
know he
been
was in
because
the first one.
yeah, you're right because he was the security guard for the museum.
And I'm trying to remember this other guy's name. I know he passed away a while back too. Mickey Rooney. I loved Mickey Rooney.
I don't remember a lot about him. I remember my mom and my grandmother talking about him a lot though.
I saw some of the movies he made, and he was on a. I think he might have been on an episode of. He was on one of those sitcoms I watched when I was a kid.
Uh-huh.
Just like one-off episode. I think was he on Full House? I'm thinking he was on Full House.
He may have been on an episode or two. I think everybody from that era of full like when Full House was on, anybody that was still around, I think made an appearance on that show. It was just a thing to do.
Yeah.
And I will say
Yeah, he played Mr. Draghorn. He was on an episode in 1994.
I will say that's what I miss about traditional TV programming is you saw a lot of the older generation stars appearing on the newer shows just to kind of give validity to the newer shows and kind of pass the torch.
Yeah.
Um, and you don't get that nowadays, which in the entertainment world, I think that's why this younger generation right now doesn't have as much respect for the older programming and the older cinema that existed like we did, because we obviously had the stars that we grew up with, but we were very we were used to seeing the stars from our parents and grandparents era making cameo appearances every now and again, and we grew to love them in our own way in the context of what we were watching. I don't think you see that as much with our celebrities appearing in newer things.
Yeah, because of that reason, because of my dad, I still watch Red Skelton. I love Red Skelton. That dude was hilarious. You hear
Mhm.
people talk about this show is good, clean family fun, and then you start watching it, and there'll be 9 or 10 cuss words that they're using throughout the show.
Yep.
You watch Red Skelton, you got probably a funnier show without that language.
Yeah.
And the fact that their commercials were done live on stage made it even better.
Yep. Um, and just to kind of do some shameless self promotion, as far as the commercials that we were used to when we were kids, um, in this case, primarily the radio commercials, where it wasn't something that was necessarily visual. When I just did the recording for the commercial for the merch store, the first guy that my mom was married to was very much involved in doing commercials like that. Like he would produce commercials in his office. So I think that's why I'm as comfortable doing it as I am. But I think with podcasting, I would love to develop a podcast that is strictly just a radio show that that is reminiscent of a 40s or 50s style radio show. If you remember from the original Annie movie, they walked into the radio studio and they were actually recording what we would call a TV show,
Yeah,
but it was on radio. I would love to see a podcast do that now, because I don't know if a lot of podcasters that are in the industry today understand where radio programs like that came from, or
right.
programs like that came from. Um, and that was one of the things I loved when I was doing the radio and TV broadcasting in college, is we focused a lot on the old radio programs from the 40s and 50s. And I would love to be able to write a show that is just strictly for a podcast. I think it'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
It'd be a lot of fun.
Oh, it would definitely be a lot of fun.
Maybe you and I should do that.
I'm down.
I think it would have to be a separate podcast from Chaos. Obviously, we would have to launch it as its own kind of program.
Yeah.
We could probably test it out on like maybe on here instead of on Chaos, because it's not that same format. We could test it out on here, not have it be something audible but not visual.
Yeah. You know, it would be cool if it's just audible to make it have that old sound like them old radio shows did.
What do you mean?
So, if you go back and watch something where they turn on like an old radio program, it's clear, but it's not real clear. It's not like what you get today with digital sound.
Kind of like, if we're talking in music terms, it's vinyl versus CDs.
Yeah,
Okay, I
yeah,
get you. Um, I will say that it would probably sound a lot more crisp and clean than the 40s and 50s
Yeah,
because the way that they had to improvise and make sounds for those stories and those shows was a lot different than what we have available to us today. Like we have sound clips and sound bites that we can use
yeah,
that are specific to um, sound effects that we need, whereas they would have to take um, probably a bad example, but they would have to take two halves of a coconut and use that if they were doing a show that talked about a horse
yeah.
walking. And I know, like I said, I know that's a really cheesy way of explaining it,
No,
but
it's not because that's what like when you was talking about that, I knew exactly where you were going with that because of Monty Python.
yeah. Um, God, I love how creative my brain is, but I just wish we had the the equipment resources and the monetary resources to do this because I think because we're so interested in doing it, I think it would be something very, very lucrative. And I think it
Yeah,
would be something that we could really explain to modern day generations. This is actually how you get a lot of what you have today.
yeah.
That would be awesome.
It's like, and I don't know why this just popped into my head, but I was reading a thing about. Well, actually, I can't remember what the article was about. It was different facts from stuff throughout history,
Mhm.
and like the laugh track we hear on TV today
Is all dead
was,
people.
yeah, it was recorded in like the 50s. So just about everybody on that laugh track are dead now.
I said that to my mom about 10 years ago. Because we were watching something and I looked at her, I was like, you do realize that the laugh tracks that we hear are all dead people, right? And she goes, what do you mean? I'm like, all the laughing that we're hearing, like the canned laughter that they're piping in, was all recorded back when grandma and grandpa were kids. She goes, no way. I'm like, yeah, it's all recorded from the 40s and 50s. And she goes, you're kidding me. I looked it up and sure as shit, I was able to show her. She goes, I never knew that.
Yeah,
It's fucking wild.
like the only laugh tracks that are not dead people are like if the show was actually filmed in front of a crowd.
Right. And
And at some point, when people are watching reruns of that, it's going to be all dead people.
oh, absolutely. That I think that's why it surprised me when I found out that Big Bang Theory was actually done in front of a live studio audience. Um, I didn't know that until probably a couple of years before it went off the air that it was actually done in front of a live studio audience because if I remember correctly, the only show we grew up with that actually made it a point to say is filmed in front of a live studio audience was Cheers. Like
I was
they
about to
said
say
that in their
Cheers.
yeah, they said that literally in their intro. And that's the only show. I mean, I know that there was obviously other shows that had it, but that was the only show that made it a point to actually say it.
Well, most of the other ones, the only way you found out was when they did like, and I think just about every sitcom has done it at some point before their end. Now, I'm not. I don't think Big Bang Theory did it, but most of them will have like a behind the scenes episode.
Oh, Big Bang Theory did. They
Did they?
absolutely did. And it was
Um,
probably the most emotional shit I've ever watched.
it's like I remember watching Fresh Prince
Hmm.
and Will Smith. He was like
That's right.
they,
They did that in front of a live audience, didn't they?
yeah, and they showed him going out in front like. Well, even actually, it might not even been a behind the scenes show. There was an episode where Carlton was running and screaming, and he dropped down to his knees and was just dragging himself across the floor, and then he
Yeah.
dragged himself through the crowd. But the behind the scenes episode, I remember Will walking out in front of the crowd, and he's looking, and he's like, "Oh no, actually, no, this wasn't behind the scenes either." But I remember him saying, "If we so rich, Why can't we afford a ceiling? And the camera panned up, and all you could see was the lights pointing down at them. And I'm like, crap, Fresh Prince done broke the fourth wall.
Yeah, I was gonna say they broke the fourth wall, and I actually didn't understand that reference until about probably a decade ago,
Yeah,
because I didn't actually understand too much about what the fourth wall concept was. Um, yeah, that's wild. I don't know, like there's so many things, and this is what I talk about when I talk about being a conservative and it not being anything related to politics. I want to conserve the things that I learned when I was a kid about the world around me and, the things that I grew up with and the knowledge of the old radio shows that eventually became TV shows. Um, the way that some of those TV shows had a live studio audience and some of them didn't. That's what I want to preserve because there was something the other day, and this is something I had completely forgotten. Somebody had made mention of the, I believe it was, I don't know if it's this year or if it's in the 2040s that it's going to happen. Back in the 80s, um, either 80s or early 90s, Nickelodeon actually buried a time capsule on the grounds of Universal Studios in Florida. And like I said, I think it's either coming up or it's going to be in the 2040s that they unearth the time capsule and look in it. Um, but I think more people need to kind of look at the concept of a time capsule just so they understand the eras in which they were not alive, to
yeah,
realize why the era that they are alive is the way it is. Because I think that a lot of the reasons that are being talked about today as to why things are the way they are fed to the younger generation to make them think a certain way instead of it actually being the reason that things are the way they are. Um, so I wish more people were talking about the concept of, time capsules and why certain eras were the way they were and how they shaped the way that we are or that we operate today.
yeah.
Oh. I just remembered we were supposed to talk about another music thing and we just got off on a complete fucking tangent.
Ain't that usually how it goes, though?
Oh yeah. Um I definitely don't want to end the stream. So I mean we could talk forever, but I do want to because this particular thing has specific personal meaning to me. Um I saw a video and I think I sent it to you or I maybe only told you, but I don't know. But I saw a video on TikTok where it talked about P. Diddy, who we grew up with as Puff Daddy, and then Diddy, and then whatever the fuck you wanted to call himself.
He's had an identity crisis.
Yeah, he did. At least he didn't change his name to a symbol, but I
True.
under I understand why Prince did that, so I'm not going to give him shit for that. That was, him striking against Warner Brothers, so I understand that. Um, but Diddy's got his own host of things that we don't want to get into that have come out in the last couple of years. But back, and I think this happened in 97 or 98. It was shortly after Notorious B.I.G. died. Um, Diddy, Faith Hill, 112,
Faith Hill.
Or no, I'm sorry, Faith Evans.
I was about to say I thought it was Faith Evans.
Yeah, it was Faith Evans. Sorry. Um, and then somebody else was involved. They all got together and recorded a song called "I'll Be Missing You,"
Yeah,
and the backing music was actually the tune for "Every Breath You Take" by Sting.
yeah.
And I mean, not that I probably had to do this, but I just enjoyed the fact that I had to make the distinction to you between the singer and the wrestler. um, but that was a song that I only came to know after, what was it, 2001 into 2002. Um, Around that era is when I started, becoming familiar with that song. And like I said, it was recorded like in the late 90s after Biggie died. And I had originally used it for a candlelight vigil that we held for an old classmate of mine that had passed away at 16 from a car accident. And I put it on a CD and we played it at his gravesite for the candlelight vigil. And it's a song that has stuck with me since 2001. And just recently they said that I don't know if it took place prior or if I mean, I guess it's taking place now. Um, or and the story has just come out over the last probably decade or so. Diddy got in trouble for using "Every Breath You Take" or the music to it um, in that song because he never got the publishing rights for it, and so he ended up probably over the last decade or so. He ended up having to pay every year. He paid Sting every year. I think it's something like two between two somewhere between either $2,000 or $5,000 a year, or no, $5,000 a day.
Holy
Um,
crap!
because of how big that song got after they recorded it, and he's had to pay royalties to Sting in the amount of either $2,000 or $5,000 a day uh, to recoup the losses that Sting, incurred from Diddy using that song. And it just blew me away. Like, I understand when you have intellectual property like a song or a melody that you create where there's licensing agreements that you need to have in place to use it if you're not the person who made it. Um, but I think it shocked the shit out of me, that price tag, where and I think it was Sting that was actually on a podcast recently that was talking about it, and he said, "Yeah, Diddy has paid me X amount of dollars a day for the use of that melody." Um, and I think there's actually Sting's vocals in it too. Um, for the use of that song, retroactive all the way back to 97 or 96 or 97 when they recorded it.
See, Diddy could have solved him or saved himself all that money if he'd have just went like Vanilla Ice and added a somewhere in the song to make it different.
Why you gotta bring Vanilla Ice into this? um, that story blows me away too. Primarily because for decades we thought that um, Vanilla Ice was fighting that um, that royalty battle with them, but
Yeah,
he's been paying Queen the whole time.
yeah,
He actually got permission to use it, but he wanted to sound all, chest puffed out and, you know, fuck the system. Um, but he's been paying them the entire time.
yeah.
but I love how when we talk about royalties and people sampling shit, it all comes back to fucking Vanilla Ice.
It's just because of
That
that
poor
interview.
bastard. I know.
It's because I remember like I've never been a rap music fan, but I
I
remember
mean,
when he
but
was
I think there's
popular.
an exception when it comes to Vanilla Ice and the likes of like MC Hammer.
Yeah,
I think people make exceptions for them.
yeah, but it's like I remember when he was really popular with Ice Ice Baby, and he's like, it's not the same. Theirs goes din 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 din, din, and ours is din 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 din. Din. It's different.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, no, he didn't.
And he gave that interview specifically for an episode of VH1's Behind the Music
Yeah,
because that's the first time we had heard him give that explanation
yeah.
was on that episode of VH1's Behind the Music, and it's cracked me up ever since.
And what's funny is we didn't have cable back then, so I don't remember how or where I saw that interview.
Uh, did you see it back then, or have you just seen it on the internet and you
No, I
forgot?
saw it back then. Like
Wow.
my friend Johnny had cable, so I was probably at his house when I
Yeah.
saw it. Um, like we had cable for a couple of years, and then the dog got up under the house and chewed the cable,
Oh no.
and so uh, Time Warner Cable. And I mean, this is because I'm old, I can remember when uh, Time Warner was Jones Intercable before it was Time Warner. But
Yeah, I don't. We had Time Warner Cable up north, but I forgot what the variations that it was gone that it went through.
yeah, but
Oh,
we
hiccups.
we contacted Time Warner about it, and they were like, well, since your dog chewed it, y'all are gonna have to pay X amount of dollars before we'll replace it or whatever. And we're like, we'll
No,
just stick with local television then.
right?
Yeah, I mean, it was the '80s. Minimum
Yeah.
wage was probably like $2.50 or something back then.
Yep. Because that was around the time. Well, mom was a teenager in the '70s, and I remember her saying that in the '70s and '80s, I think the minimum wage that she had for her jobs was something like between 250 and 270. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but my friend Johnny, they had cable, and so I would go up there and watch wrestling a lot. Um, that's what really hurt me after the dog chewed the cable because I couldn't watch my WCW Saturday Night no more. And I mean, this was before, you know, Monday Night Raw and WCW Nitro. So it was WCW Saturday Night. A couple of times a year they did Clash of the Champions.
Hmm.
But now I had a friend at school who would rent the pay per view and he would record it on VHS and then bring the tape to me at school. I'd go home and watch it and then take him the tape back. It was like I was doing black market pay per views before people knew what it was.
I remember, and I probably still have it, to be honest. It's probably packed away somewhere. There was a video cassette tape that I had that I used probably more than I should have to record so many episodes of Raw in the early 2000s. And it's weird to me to say that because I don't know why we were still using VHS in the beginning of the 2000s because DVD, I mean, I forget, I don't know if DVDs were quite popular yet. I think they were more after I was graduated that they became a thing, which seems weird because you look at the age that we are now respectively, and it seems like DVDs have been around, or at least have been in in the public use for much longer than they have. But you look at it, something like this, and you're like, wait a second. I was recording shit on, VHS as early as 2000, really. So it really
Yeah.
wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, I'm looking it up because I remember there were DVDs in the 90s. I just don't remember exactly when in the 90s.
Yeah.
It says 95, which makes sense because I don't know if you remember it, but before DVD, there was the LD, was a laser disc, and it was the size of a vinyl.
Oh, yep, the laser disc, and then before that, I think it was um I think Betamax was the 80s. Yeah, Betamax was the 80s. But I think Betamax came yeah. It was Betamax, and then it was Laserdisc, and then it was DVD, and then it was Betamax,
You were
VHS.
close. Betamax was 75.
Okay, well, it was
Cause,
Betamax.
and only reason I remember is because of the episode of that 70s show.
Oh, well, it was Betamax, VHS, and then DVD. And now I think for the most part, DVDs are even obsolete because you don't see a lot of
Because of
them around.
Blu-ray.
I mean, I'm even including Blu-ray in that because you don't see. I'm talking physical media, like tangible physical media in general. You
Yeah,
don't see a lot of the tangible physical media because of things like streaming.
yeah. That. I'm quite old school. If VCRs and VHS tapes was still as popular, or if they were still as readily available, I'd probably still be using those. I'd still be getting pissed off when I try to eject the tape and it's done eat it.
Yeah, I was
But
actually watching a TikTok the other day of somebody that has a VHS player, and they popped a VHS in, and they showed the TV screen. And if you remember, when we were kids and somebody had a video camera, if they actually tried to record what was on the TV, like if they actually pointed the camera at the TV, you'd have all these funky ass lines.
yeah,
Or if they pointed it at a computer screen, you'd have all these funky ass lines that wouldn't match up with the image that the video camera was trying to capture. And I'm sitting there watching this TikTok earlier, and I'm thinking, son of a bitch, the quality was that garbage.
I mean, no, it's that garbage now on these new TVs.
Maybe.
But the
Yeah.
TVs we had back then, the only time the VHS would show bad quality would be if you pause the movie and it flat spotted.
Yeah.
You could see
And
the flat spot.
or depending on how old the VHS tape was and how dried out the film actually was, um, I'd love to have some of these kids today try and watch a VHS tape and have to, because they talk about, the nostalgia of blowing into your video game to make it work.
Yeah,
There were times, and I don't know if you did this, but I know I did. There were times, although you had to be careful if you spit when you did it. There were times when you actually had to open the little flap on the VHS tape and do the same thing to the film reel.
yeah. Um,
God, we're fucking old, dude.
I just want to get some kids and hand them a cassette tape and a pencil and tell them to tell me what it's for.
Yeah, that's all over TikTok. And I think the funniest thing to me is when you set um, a rotary phone down in front of kids and you tell them to try and make a phone call, and the little fuckers try and actually see if Siri will help them. They don't understand what they're looking at.
Yeah,
Because this was probably last year or the year before. There was a video that went viral on TikTok. Um, it was a mother that went around and she was asking, the family members that were her age and all the way down to the youngest generation that was in her family. She was asking them, what does it look like like make the hand motion of when you would make a phone call. For you and me, we would automatically go like this.
Yeah,
But it was funny
they're
because
doing like this.
the majority of the generational ages that she was asking, they were doing this. But when she got down to about 25-ish, they were starting to do this, and it looked so fucking foreign. I'm like, what are you doing?
What got me was a few years back, and I actually did a TikTok of this with my daughter. Of course, it was probably cheating because I'm a photographer. But the videos that were going around 2 or 3 years ago on TikTok, they were saying, uh, telling their kids, "Show me how you take a picture," and the kids like, and they're like,
Yeah,
"What?" And they go like, "Yeah, like when you use your phone." So I put a TikTok up, and I was like, "Adriana, how do you take a picture?" And she went, "I'm like, well, okay." Like she knows how to use a camera.
they would say that she's entitled and that she has privilege because, she knows the old way because she has a father who's a photographer.
Yeah, it's not entitled or privileged. It's just that she's gonna know what a camera is.
She's actually educated is the difference.
What gets me is when I go into these schools, the kids come up and I'm like stand on these red feet, and then they look at my light, and I'm like, okay, you're gonna turn just your head, and you're gonna look right here where my finger is, because this is the camera, that's the light. If you want to lose your eyesight for about 30 seconds, go ahead and look at that light.
Yeah, it's I think them looking at the flash is the equivalent of our parents telling us don't fucking look at the sun, asshole.
Yeah, but it's like I can understand that with like preschoolers or kindergartners or even first graders. But when I'm at a middle school or a high school, them kids have had school pictures done every year. They know where the freaking camera is. But every one of them still, and even some of the teachers, where do you want me to look? Do I look at this? I'm like, no, do not look at that umbrella. That is my light. Keep your body angled at that umbrella. Just turn your head this way.
Yeah.
The funniest thing is when it's a little kid and I say, turn your head this way. And then they actually put their hand right here and turn.
Well, and I mean, I know that it's only going to be me and Amanda this summer, but it's at whatever point we're able to do it again. I think the three of us should go to a convention, and I want to get your perspective on, because obviously they still use. I mean, yes, they use the digital version of everything, but I want to get your perspective on the way that they take the professional photos with the celebrities, because though that same generation of kids, I think the only way that they would know what you're talking about when you tell them, look at a certain point, is if they were in the nerd community and going to these conventions, because um I've never seen a kid at a convention that doesn't know to look straight ahead at the camera.
Yeah. Well, and you ever seen a kid or a teenager go up to the camera and then they do like this? It's like, no,
I don't
don't
think
hold your
so.
hand. It's because of this. They're doing selfies like this. So
Uh-huh.
now when they come up to your camera, the majority of them want to do like this. And I'm like, no, we're not looking up your nose. Bring your chin down. You know, if I can see your brain, your head is back way too far. But I don't know. It's
Imagine talking to the high school boys when they do that. Imagine looking at them and being like, "Dude, I don't need to see that you didn't shave your nose hairs. Put your fucking head down."
well, and then here's another one. Selfie cameras have really messed up teenagers, especially. And
Hmm.
this happened Wednesday last week.
Yeah.
I was at high school, and all I was doing was 12th grade cap and gown. Now,
Hmm.
this was a very small school. It was a K-12 school,
Hmm.
private school, and they only had 21 seniors.
Wow.
They've only got like 300 kids total between kindergarten through 12th grade.
Wow. Talk about a school in the sticks.
Well, it's in the mountains in Lake Lure, so you're not far off.
I mean, that I coming from where I grew up, that's kind of considered the sticks still.
But this girl come up. I took her picture. The picture was a good picture,
Yeah.
and I turned the computer around so she could look at it. Because if it's a big class, like if there's 300 or 400, you know, I've got some schools that I have to go to that have like Clover High School in a few years, like about 2 more years, is going to have
Mhm.
almost 1,012th graders.
Wow. At
They had nine,
once?
yes, they had 997 freshmen 2 years ago when I went there.
Dear Lord.
Um, but I took this girl's picture in
Hmm.
Lake Lure last week, and I turned the computer around, and I only let the seniors look at their pictures, and only if it's a small class. Like, that 1,000 seniors is not going to
Right.
happen.
Yeah, right.
But she looked and she goes, "Why does it look backwards?" And I'm like, "It doesn't look backwards." And she goes, "Yes, it does." And I said, "Here's the problem. You take a lot of selfies, don't you?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "What happens when you take a selfie? If you have writing on your shirt, it's backwards." I said, "You're used to seeing your selfies backwards, so you don't know what it looks like when you see your picture the right way,
Right.
you know." And
They don't understand the concept of mirroring, even though they take a bunch of fucking pictures of themselves.
yeah, so I took the second picture, and she had said, "I'm backwards and my face looks fat," and I'm like, "Your face doesn't look fat." Well, then she changed her hair. Like, she had all of her hair pushed way back, I guess.
Yeah.
When she fixed it and it was coming down the sides of her face like she was used to, I could
Yeah.
see why she thought it looked fat, because on the second picture her face did look thinner because of her hair. But I'm like, if you think this looks backwards, I don't know what to tell you about that. This is you the way everybody else sees you.
Now, do you have the capability in your um in your software to mirror the photo so that it would look like she thinks it needs to look? Do
Not
you have
on
the
I
do
don't
you have
have
the
it
cap-
on the computer at work now.
No.
They might be able to do it on at the lab,
Hmm.
but the problem is, like, their tassel coming down on this side of their head, the little 23. If they were to flip it around, the 23 would look backwards.
I still have my cap and gown from when I graduated, and I think, was it last year? I actually came across the tassel for the first time in, several years. Like, I hadn't seen it. I didn't know I still had it. And now to know that it's 2023 and it's 20 years since I graduated, I don't even want to look at that thing anymore.
Yeah, my
To know
my
that there's
cap,
tassels out there that actually say 23 now, it's disheartening, dude.
yeah, my cap and gown and tassel was lost in my parents' house fire. But I I got my diploma. My diploma had fallen behind my dresser in my bedroom.
Yeah.
The fire didn't reach my bedroom, so there was some smoke damage in there. But since the diploma was behind the dresser, it wasn't that bad
I'm
dirty.
I'm pretty sure I still have my high school diploma. Either I do or mom does.
Yeah,
Um, I have my high school diploma, and then I have the certificate that I got from Virginia Western. And I shouldn't be I shouldn't say certificate like that as if it's something not to be proud of, because if you apply yourself and you get validation like that you completed something, you should be proud of it. But it's still, and I don't know if it's the same for you, but I think just because of the way that we were raised in our generation, I think only calling it a certificate, knowing that I only went for like a year and a half to complete the certification, I feel like I didn't do the full college experience. so it's weird for me to just say a certificate because it doesn't seem as saying it out loud doesn't seem as valid as somebody who goes for 2 or 4 years. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, at least you went for the year and a half. I couldn't afford college. My dad's job had just closed down,
Hmm.
and I didn't get any of the scholarships I applied for. So
Um, I'm not gonna lie. I got the what they call the tap and the Pell grants. I don't know if that existed down here.
yeah,
Uh, tap and Pell grants, and then what they call FAFSA. I'm not sure how the fuck they say it. They call it FAFSA or FAFSA, something like that. All of that funding was what put me through. Um, and I'm grateful for it. Don't get me wrong. Um, but that's another reason why I still question if what I did has any validity to it. It's weird. It's how they say that there's this thing called imposter syndrome
yeah,
where you've done something but you don't really feel like you did it the right way. That's what I feel like when it comes to how I managed to get a certification from classes I took at a college. It's kind of the imposter syndrome thing because I know that my friends and a lot of my friends and acquaintances went through the legitimate 2 and 4 years to actually get their degree. Um, but I think for what I was going for, I learned what I needed to learn, even though it hasn't gotten me anywhere yet. um, because I honestly wish I was able to be in a business that I started so far. Um, but for me, I think it's just a matter of I need to change my frame of thinking, my way of thinking, so that I don't doubt the effort that I've put into the knowledge that I've obtained from, the studying that I've done.
yeah. No, I my mom took me to the community college here in Shelby, and I was going to go take photography. You know, she was going to try to get me in there for photography. I was going to take photography, and I think was it broadcasting maybe. Anyway, I had just spent my whole 12th grade year, both semesters, learning photography,
Hmm.
developing film, staying in the dark room, and all that stuff. Um, and my teacher, she had told me that up until that point, all the students she had taught, I was the one that could do it for a living.
Hmm.
So that made me feel good.
I loved photography when I took it. I don't, and I think it was in my first year of high school that I took it. I don't think it was in middle school. I think it
Yeah,
was in my first year of high school. I fucking loved it.
I did too.
Um, I don't know that I would have pursued it as a career, but it was something that I really enjoyed.
Well, for me, when we went to the community college, my mom had went there and she had took photography when she was there.
Hmm.
She was like, we went in and she took me back where the photography lab was, and she's like, you know, my son's interested in coming and doing or taking photography. I took photography here. I just wanted to show him the lab if that's okay. And they said, well, we're not offering photography this year. Like they were like, we're switching everything over to digital, and it's going to be next year before we're doing it again. And I'm like, just spent a whole year learning how to develop film and print out my pictures like that. And he's like, yeah, I said everything's moving over to digital and it's about to be that way everywhere. And so I
Yep.
was like, I was in one of the last classes to learn film photography, 35 millimeter photography. And
Yep.
it's like, I learned this really awesome skill and I'm not going to be able to use it. So then I just went to work Well, I had some shoulder surgeries, but I ended up working 16 years in grocery stores. And when I got fired, that's when, it took me getting fired from Walmart to learn what I wanted to do when I grew up. I got back into photography. My parents helped me get my first camera. I got it. And it was 2 years of taking pictures and stuff on my own before I got my job.
Yeah. I felt the same way because, like I said, I had taken it for half a semester in ninth grade. I felt the same way from the things I had learned in high school about it when I got to working for Six Flags and as an offshoot working for Kodak in Six Flags because I learned on the traditional 35 millimeter film cameras in high school, but once I got to working in Kodak for Six Flags, by that time they were using the Nikon DSLRs, and as much as I enjoyed those, it's like it felt to me like there was something missing. It felt to me like it shouldn't just be the push of a button and you see the photo up there and you can just print it out. That I think that the process that you and I went through and learning it in school, it taught you the process, but it also taught you to develop patience for the process. And I think that's and
Excuse me.
I think that's a lot of what we deal with the younger generation today, and even some of us older generation people, um, with what we have available to us um, now, is we've lost the need to develop patience. And I think that, and that's in life in general. And I'm curious if you feel the same way with certain things that you remember from when we were kids versus now, if you think that patience is not as much of a focus as it still should be.
It's because now everything is about instant gratification.
Yeah. What do you and if you could define it, what if from our generation in our time as, kids and teenagers, what would we have defined as instant gratification back in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s versus what is considered instant gratification now?
I mean, the only thing really that we had for instant gratification back then was going to get food. Because I mean, we took a picture, we had to develop it, or we had to send the film off and then wait 2 weeks for it to come back. We I remember when Coyote Ugly come out. Back then stuff was switching over to DVD, but they were still putting the movies on VCR or VHS.
Yeah.
So I remember calling Target and Walmart and all these places, and they're like, "Well, we've got it on DVD, but it's not going to be on VHS for another X amount of weeks." I didn't have a DVD player, so I had to wait.
And
You
it's
know,
weird because you would think that with the newer medium of, newer medium of media, weird way to say it, that it would take longer to put it on the newer media than the standard media that we were used to.
yeah. Now, after I graduated, um, the first thing that I remember, and I might have even been 19. I might have been out of school about a year by then. But the first thing I remember that was instant gratification was Napster or LimeWire.
Hmm.
But before that, there wasn't a whole lot of it.
Yeah, because I think for me, my first understanding of any sort of instant gratification was when I was in high school.
Yeah.
That's when I really started to have an understanding of what that meant. And obviously, being 4 years ahead of me, you were already out. Um, but yeah, that's really where instant gratification became that I started developing an understanding of what it was around that time, because there were more things that were easily attainable, readily accessible, however you want to, you know, characterize it. More things were becoming more easily attainable by that time.
Yeah.
And I'm sure with you working at Walmart, you saw a lot. You saw it a lot faster than even us as consumers did, because you were working probably at Walmart by that time, right?
I started in 2004.
Okay, so you started the year after I graduated.
I was there from
But
'04 to 2017.
yeah, so I mean, even then, um, you still saw it coming into, you know the consumer realm faster than we did,
Yeah.
because you were kind of right on the front lines of it kind of being in our purview, I think.
Um, so when the PS4 came out, all these people pre-ordered it. We didn't get but one shipment in every couple of days.
Hmm.
I just sat back. I had my money put up for it. I just sat back, and when they finally had it in, I went over there and got it. Several of the younger people that I worked with who wanted them were complaining almost every day about, I can't believe we ain't got no PS4s in. I'm ready for it. I'm tired of waiting. Same thing with the PS5. Well, of course, when the PS5 come out, they said we're going to mass produce more of them than we did the PS4 because we don't want the same problem again. They ran
Hmm.
into the same problem because more people pre-ordered them than they expected. Same deal. Put my money up. I would check every couple of days. Um, Walmart got a shipment of them in. They were selling them online on their website. At the time, they wasn't shipping them to the stores. You had to buy them off the .com, and they were putting one up for sale every 10 minutes. So I went on there when I got home from work. I would refresh my page, and as soon as it popped up, I clicked buy. But before I could get my information put in, somebody done bought it. I'm like, okay, whatever.
God bless autofill in 2023, because that shit won't
Yeah,
happen now.
yeah. But I ended up getting an email from PlayStation about buying one from Sony on Sony Direct. And it made sure to tell me this is not a guarantee that you'll get a PlayStation 5. It's an opportunity. It said be online at 3 o'clock. You'll be put in a queue. And when it's your turn, you'll get put in the store. So I went on at 2:45, and it told me it had a little countdown timer of whenever they were going to start putting people in the queue. Puts me in the queue, says your estimated wait time is like an hour and 45 minutes. So I used to have my guitar propped up against the end table right here beside the couch all the time. So I said, if I'm about to wait that long, I'm going to play some music. And I picked my guitar up. I strummed 3 times and looked up, and I'm like, holy shit, I'm already in the store. So I put the guitar down and I bought my PlayStation. I'm like, okay, this was on like a Monday. PlayStation was delivered on Friday. And I'm like, all these kids who are complaining about wanting the PlayStation now, I'm like, you would have never made it in the 80s and 90s. Like,
We
I'm,
had to wait almost a month for some things.
yeah. And I'm like, I've had my money put up. Yeah, I've been looking at them, trying to find them, but I know I'll get it when it's time for me to get one.
You know,
You know, y'all complaining about it every single day is not going to help you get it any faster.
yeah,
It's just going to make people pissed off that you won't shut the hell up about it.
yeah. Oh wow. Well, I think what we're gonna do is because we're going on 2 hours and 10 minutes here.
Yeah,
I think we're gonna end the stream because this was fun.
yeah,
I do want to have a discussion with you after the fact, just so we can plan other things. But yeah, this was fun. I hope anybody who gets to see this, contributes any of their, their thoughts on whatever we talked about. Doesn't matter, what part of our conversation you contribute to. Um, your feedback is something that we look forward to, and I think Chad probably checks my channel just as much as I do, especially when he's on, a stream with me. But yeah, this was fun. I'm looking forward to doing it a lot more, especially this week.
yeah.
Um, and I will say, and I know this is probably not necessary, I do appreciate you being patient with me and doing it in the evening
Oh, no
versus
problem.
this morning, because I would not have been functional this morning if we tried to do it. Um, just because I seriously had only gotten about 3.5 hours sleep, so I was not functioning on any logical, useful level. Um, but yeah, we will do this again, obviously. But yeah, let us know what you think about the things we discussed, and maybe we will, reference people's feedback in the next episode. So we're going to go talk about the next stream, and we will see you tomorrow.
Yep.
Bye,
Later.
everybody.